Okay, hello everyone. I was just watching the news tonight like everyone else, and I watched the live stream with Thomas Paine or Michael Moore. And I, first of all, doing a sound check to make sure everyone can hear me, if that's good. One really great thing about this super chat, I can see it's kind of addictive, but it keeps you kind of locked down, and you don't go out and talk to people, you're just kind of in your channel. But I did see one gal who was running for mayor in Cascade Locks, Oregon, and I see Golden, Colorado, beautiful Golden, Colorado. And I had gone on this tour of the Columbia River, one of my last trips with my dad, and my mom, obviously, when I was still married, down the Columbia River. Which is a beautiful trip. If you ever go to Oregon, if you ever visit Portland, Oregon, drive out to Multnomah Falls, and then take this kind of fair ride, a Goodman lockdown. Yes, I am attacking H.A. Goodman until he says I found the DCCC and the DNC backup hard drives. I'm coming at you with super chat. H.A. But it's just a beautiful trip, and he had grown up. Just a little bit about my dad. He was in the CCCs before he went into the Army as a radio guy, and they were the firefighters, and he was in Yellowstone, and he had a lot of, great memories. Oops, sorry about that. If it's choppy. He had a lot of great memories of the outdoors, and they had built, they had to build their own log cabins to live in, and they still use those log cabins and so forth. So it was one of my really great memories. And, oops, it says it's unstable. Okay, sorry about that. That I have neglected a lot of the communication. Yep, swing camera shot does not look good. Okay, well, there's all you can always find the hard drives. I don't know how to do this other than you can always find the hard drives over at A. Goodman's channel, so you can swing over there if you don't like the upswing shot here. And it is about going out, and it is about getting out and talking to people. What good is it if we're all just in our little, hotel room or wherever, just talking to each other, reinterpreting what someone else has processed for us, what someone else wants us to think, right? Actually going out and talking to people and actually getting new intelligence and getting new information. And I talked to a guy tonight. Jenny and I would go over to this Applebee's close by here in Largo Town Center. It's called. It's the last stop on the Blue Line here in Washington D.C. And we would talk to people. We're sitting there. We're interacting with people. Hey, where do you work? A lot of our leads came from actually people that were involved in like SES. A lot of information came from there, and different ways things were structured. Fake police, the Masonic clubs, the Eastern Star, this and that. So many meetings, so many people we met. It's about going out and talking to people, and not necessarily, sorry if it's buffering really bad. I don't know if there's a way to check that. It would be nice to see if there was a way to check that by me just watching it. But here's the big things. So very active at volcanoes. Oh, solar minimum. Oh, very cool. My dad loved Yellowstone. I remember going there when I was in 8th grade. And the first thing I saw when we pulled into the campground, we had borrowed a camper. First thing I saw was an elk in the middle of a river munching on like 50 feet away. It was this gigantic, not an elk, I'm sorry. It was a moose. I'd never seen a moose before. Of course, you see the bears and all that stuff. It was really great, and it just brought back a lot of memories with my dad, things I enjoyed with my dad. So anyway, let me move into the news. I would say 3 things happened today that are significant with all the news, with the Bruce Orr testimony, the 7 hours of testimony, and with regard to our channel. Verification, verification, verification. What I saw today was verification all up and down the line of all the things we've said on this channel. I said there was a very strong connection between Bruce Orr and Oleg Deripaska. I said Oleg Deripaska was the key to the teams, to the hacking teams. Turns out, yes, indeed, in 2016, Bruce Orr did meet with Oleg Deripaska. They kept on saying Russian oligarch on Fox. It was almost like they didn't want to give me credit, because I had 30 or 40 videos on Oleg Deripaska. They're still well, and the second thing is there was a meeting in 2015 with Oleg Deripaska. And as I had said before, Bruce Orr was running these drugs for weapons type programs, Fast and Furious, Project Cassandra, etc., and then kind of pressed into the service for Crossfire Hurricane starting in 2015. And it turns out, yes, there was a personal meeting between text messages. We need to see more of the supporting information between the other 42 different people. We don't have any updates on what happened in Washington, D.C. with that today, but I think that's going to be another important thing. On another front, which if you actually do the research and you actually dig, you find out Andy McCabe actually set up a server in Chappaqua in 1998 when Hillary was first thinking about setting up and running in 2000 for Senate. Then nothing surprises you about a email capability that would automatically be forwarding all the emails of Hillary Clinton to China automatically. So the China Dropbox. So however the Dropbox is affected, what it means is everything that hit Hillary's server as a target server was then forwarded on to China. This is going to be what I call a shared Dropbox is going to be the same model for the MIS department for relaying the email from the DNC, relaying the information from the State Department, right? The syncing with the BlackBerries, and then also sending it to what I call the McCain server in Arizona, and then forwarding it on to China. Now, whether it went on to Russia or not, we don't know that yet. Malaysia, we need more details. But there is a story, and you can just see what they're trying to do is they're trying to break this up so it doesn't seem cohesive. They're trying to break this up so it doesn't seem like, hey, they're not coming out and going, hey, it's just like George Webb said. We got a Cozy Bear team down in the Capitol, and we got a Fancy Bear team up in New York. And we bring people in and out from New York and DC through these Russian retreats, and then they do spying, and then they forward it all to Romp because he's got the drug piece, and then they forward it out to Arizona because John McCain manages the weapons piece on the Senate side, and then it gets forwarded to China selectively. Depending on if they paid this quarter's subscription. They don't want to say that. They want to put a little piece out here, give a little piece over here to this reporter, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm more verification today. With that, that's a huge story right there because it means all I heard Byron York say this with the Washington. Thank you very much for the. Oh, that's. Yeah, I sat next to a guy who worked at the Pentagon tonight, talked to him a lot. He was in the Air Force for 22 years. We talked about, support. We talked about what he could talk about with battle situations and so forth. I told him about my brother being in an Air Force, actually unusual because he got assigned to a team in Panama, which was, maybe the military was doing things that shouldn't be done. But I was talking about this compartmentalization and how, the Air Force guy on the helicopter doesn't know any better. He just hears the tink, 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 and he hears the radiator overheating, and then the helicopter going down, and then Delta Force comes and gets them, and then they leave. They don't know anything about Piper Cubs going to Mina Airport and taking drugs and then flying weapons down to the Contras. They don't know anything. It's all hidden from them. It's all compartmentalized. But he was saying the exact same thing. And it's nice to talk to somebody in battle situations that's been fired on, talk to somebody who's now in a task force at the Pentagon that's moved from the military. I had done a story this morning reporting on at Building 213 at the Navy Yard where CIA was recruiting directly at the gate. I mean, just as people were going from the parking lot out of being at the main contracting facility called NAVC, the Key Naval Support Area, they're meeting them right at the gate. Hey, what are you going to do after you get out of the Navy? You should think about working at the CIA. Here's my card. And it doesn't say anything, no such agency. And it just says, Bob, just say Bob so-and-so supports your application. So it's immediately talking to somebody when you made a statement earlier in the day, and then immediately getting feedback. And this is why I kind of don't. I like this format because I've seen so many so many contributors, and been able to recognize so many contributors that I haven't paid enough attention to. But also, I don't want to get into this H.A. Goodman thing where you're having 5 and 6 and 7 super chats a day, and you're just saying, somebody super chat me, somebody, you know what I mean? And you never get out of the house, you know? So, but there was one other thing I did follow up on. And Jenny and I used to go there every day, kind of at the end of the day to this Applebee's, and kind of meet these different people, and most work in government, right? This one gal was worked at the World Bank, and Eric Braverman's a big part of our story. Eric Braverman worked at the World Bank, kind of arranged loans for pipelines, I guess would be the easiest way to say it. And a lot of Ex-Im Bank, the Export-Import Bank, also does a lot of these loans and so forth. And if you're at the Clinton Foundation, you'd love to have somebody at the World Bank, because it's going to, hey, this is great. We don't have to pay for all the infrastructure. They're going to put the roads in for us, and then we'll have the pipeline. And then they'll pay for that. We'll loan the money for the pipeline. This is great. And then Avi Braverman also worked at the World Bank. Okay. So it's just great to see a gal, when we'd probably seen her, maybe Jenny and I, maybe 10, 20 times. These are regulars, we get to know all the people there. And she worked for DHS at the World Bank. She was doing security at the World Bank. And we're talking about major things that happened, because you remember when all the limousines come in, when there's like the Greek, a crisis and so forth. So it really makes the news real. It's like, oh, you remember Christine Lagarde coming in and the whole renegotiation, and everybody, the world was going to collapse. And anyway, not really newsy, but it's important for people who know Jenny, that she was really into these dogs, these PTSD dogs. Now, this woman didn't have PTSD, but this woman talked to Jenny a lot about getting a dog. And Jenny went through detail about how to pick the perfect dog. This woman lived in a high rise. She was afraid about, the elevator, and she was afraid the dog wouldn't be able to get out in time to go to the back, all these conversations and so forth. And then I hadn't really socialized with Jenny in the last month. She'd been mainly working on the trafficking stuff, and I think working a little bit with Thomas Paine, but we had the kind of the rift with Flynn, and so we weren't socializing anymore going there. And so I saw this woman again. I went back there, and I went back to basically tell the staff that Jenny had passed away, and that's why, she's not like, she hates everybody here now. It just, it just happened. And I saw this woman, and I went over and told her, and of course, obviously very emotional, because she was going to train the dog, and exactly like JK's daughter was going to train the dog. So it was just kind of just one of these reminders. But she really was a person who wanted to share her expertise across the board. It wasn't just always about police investigative work. She really had a great heart. And somebody told me about it. I found out the prices for training these dogs is really expensive. It's like $45,000 to train the dog. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's terrible. But somebody said there was a veteran's dog food that supported these PTSD dogs for vets and so forth. So that kind of, I said I was there and wrapped up with the news is going to be there. One other item, which is Paul Erickson and Butina. I don't know if everybody saw this or not, but literally they cut. Weissman did a video where Butina, Paul Erickson's the kind of the weapons broker who was using the NRA as a cover. Butina was the person they were going to blame it on. They were going to blame it on the Russians. She was taking the orders and then forwarding those orders back to a guy named Torshin, who was running and laundering the money in the Russian financial system. Well, in order to push down that theory that this is actually a gun running operation, which it is, and before that it was Anna Chapman, they had cut a video of where they're in the sound booth and singing, kind of Beauty and the Beast. So they actually sang the song Beauty and the Beast. And I know what Weissman's idea was. It's like, how could this pretty 29-year-old like this old 58-year-old guy who was twice her age? Well, it would have to be Beauty and the Beast. So let's have him sing that song. So you can actually go out and hear this thing. It's so poorly done. It's so, you can just sense the cringe factor of Bettina. It makes me believe that she's not even in prison. They went in to cut this tape just to push down this guns for drugs kind of thing. The thing is coming. Project Cassandra is coming. That and all this is moving in the direction with Oleg Deripaska. Oleg Deripaska is the person that ties it all together. Doesn't matter that McCain is passed away. It's really going to unlock the whole story. And again, verification. If you look at the 42, I should have done this before I got on here. If you look at the 42 people that are being questioned, and look at how many of those people we've covered in our series. It's almost like they looked at our list and said, hey, we should have these guys, and there's been 3 rounds. Devin Nunes has added 3 rounds. So who knows? We don't really know for sure. Hannity tonight I was like, yep, and they're still holding on to this idea that Oleg Deripaska did a $25 million rescue attempt in 2009 and 2016. They're still holding on. John Solomon's just still holding on to that idea that Bob Levison's this good guy. He's not the CIA agent that's running the Kish Island. He's not going at the air show. There's nothing going back and forth. It's just, but all the evidence is to the contrary. We have 6 years in a row where the American government lied to their own DIA liaison to the FBI, Robin Gritz, right, about the attempts. So 6 years in a row. I would assume Mike Flynn would know about that sort of thing. So he was prevented from telling her, right? We've got Bob Levison running the C-24 operation, which was the organized crime task force out of the New York office before he moved there, right? The follow-on people that go there are the same people that are working with Christopher Steele, right? So nothing has changed. It's actually just a flow. You can almost see it like, okay, we're going to move Bob out of here. Bob, now you need to train Andy up. Okay, Andy got trained up by 2004. He started in 98. Got him kind of trained up with all the Trump people and all the Russia GRU military people they put into Trump Tower, right? Did that for 4 or 5 years. Then they sent Bob to Iran when they said, okay, we're going to have to somehow backfill on this HEU that we've been selling all over the place. So that's when Oleg Deripaska, takes the yellow brick road, and Andy now is running the operation in New York. And then Mike Gaeta, the guy who's on the list, the next guy. But Christopher Steele is the constant person that each one of them is dealing with all along the way. Christopher Steele is that key contact. Same thing. And it's the whole cover-up is the whole operation for the last 20 years. It's the same template, which is kind of nice. So I'm going to look at the questions here. Yeah, I should interview Hannity. It's funny because Sarah Carter does follow me. I think that it's probably like one of her underlings or whatever. I do think it's not me. It's the channel. It's the people doing the research that is so exceptional. If you think about it, Sarah Carter probably only has, let's say, best of all worlds, she has 10 interns that are going to be journalism majors. We have at least 1,000, and the cross-referencing and so forth. It's so much more powerful. This channel is a research channel. It's so much more powerful than any of the other channels. I saw Thomas Paine, Michael D. Moore, I guess is the name. And I remember meeting him a year ago, and I remember starting my series 2 years ago when he wrote that first article about Anthony Weiner's laptop with all this. And I said to him a year ago, hey, I know you got a family and so forth. I'll be that public face, I don't mind. You know, I'm going to be the guy who's carrying the flag. You know, I'm going to be out there. I'll be the face of. I wasn't the face of True Pundit, but I was covering the same kind of things. True Pundit was a key source, and I was taking a lot of those sort of magazine, sort of publications that were on that side of kind of the middle. And maybe True Pundit's a little to the right sometimes, but I was trying to stay toward the middle and say, hey, this is the truth. I mean, you watch the news, it's almost laughable. They were watching Utina singing Beauty and the Beast with Paul Erickson. Now, would that have ever happened? At the point with that would ever happen, if that wasn't a cover story to press down the idea that we had an NRA guy doing weapons deals. Remember, discovers our color of law weapons operation, right? To me, it screams cover, cover, cover. You know, it's like we don't want to go anywhere near this Russian weapons trading out of Trump Tower. We have all the evidence. The problem with Weissman is we've got all the cameras, we've got it all. We've got all the angles, we've got people buying stuff, and we've got the letters going back and forth and the taxi medallions. We've got everything we want, but we can't use it because what we're going to do is we're going to expose our own color of law guns operation. So that's kind of the sad part of this. So I'm going to look at some comments here just to see. Yeah. Oh, that's a great point about Club Courage. By putting your face out there, I can't tell you how much, just by talking to people like Jenny, who, I mean, I lived with it every day, didn't want to show her face, right? Because of fear of reprisals. When you do have the courage, it emboldens a vast amount of people that you wouldn't think. A whole bunch of people say, well, maybe I can now do a voice interview. And then once I got to the voice interview, I remember doing this with Robin Gritz, you know, let's do a hands interview where you can actually see the hands. It's much more, you know, you can actually see the people like trying to express themselves and see the hands moving and so forth. And then let's try to, you know, put you on there. You don't have to say your real name, just say Thomas Paine, whatever. But I remember saying this with Thomas Paine. When he comes in, and he had a thing with hockey, VHS tapes, you know, that he was trading, and he's a hockey fan, so he's selling hockey tapes. Okay, you know, so that's thank you very much, Sean. Appreciate that. Rain falling on my shoes. Rain falling on my shoes, heading out to the East Coast. Lord knows I paid some dues, tangled up in HEU. Yes, tangled up in HEU, tangled up in LEU, tangled up in blue. Yeah, I mean, it inspires everybody. And the reason why I promoted Jason's show tonight was it's not about Jason, it's about Michael Moore, and I want his book to be very successful, and I want him to come forward. He knows a lot of the FBI guys. He did a lot of the research for the FBI guys. I thought he actually worked for the FBI. Looks like he might have been a contractor. Okay, I might have got that a little bit wrong. Jason had said he thought he worked for the DEA. Might have been a contractor. The part I thought was amazing, where he was getting paid $75,000 a month. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of coin, and he was feeling bad for it. He said, "I'm now doing something that is doing my penance for that." I know Jason may be, you know, people are going to say bad stuff. I want him to be successful because the more people who actually do that, what Michael did tonight, the more people that are going to come forward. And if it's only one or two, it's easy for the McCabe's and everybody to focus on you and put all their resources at you. But when it's 10 or 12 or 14, they're all doing the same thing and going out and getting interviews and so forth, it's much more difficult. If there was 14, or let's say if it was a dozen, and I'll just pick me, as I won't talk about anybody else, but if there was a dozen me running around, you know, causing all this commotion, going to all these different places, talking to people, and, you know, hey, work at DOD. Oh, how's that? Oh, do you ever see this? You know, you ever work on Operation Cassandra? You ever, you know, whatever. It just creates so much turmoil. Even this channel has created so much turmoil with the work that Jenny did for the narrative, because Thomas Paine made a good point of this tonight. If you have the truth is kind of like water. It's incompressible, you can try to, but then it just squirts out, the truth kind of somehow does that. And that is the really great part of this channel and this research. That's why I love being a research channel. People come here as a destination because they want that research. They don't come here obviously to, see my poor angle, the upswing angle that I've been told is a horrific angle. Yeah, it was a very good video. Jason did a great job, and I think if he sticks to that, he's going to be amazing. He's going to grow and be super successful. Bad upskirt angle. Yes, I'm not wearing a skirt, so we're all safe there. What happened to Jenny? Okay, went out of the loop for a few months. Well, read True Pundit. I don't sell T-shirts. Biden indictment. Wow, thank you very much. Alberto Diaz Saldana. ¿Dónde vives? ¿Dónde vives, Alberto? ¿Qué país? Es muy interesante para mí. Es muy importante. Yo necesito conocer dónde mis contributores. ¿Cómo se dice contributors in español? But that's very nice. Thank you very much. This gives me a chance to practice my Spanish, right? Okay. I want to, that's another interesting thing about this super chat. Yeah. Somebody made a good comment about, I don't like this guest, I don't like that guest. And I always said this, it's baby in bathwater. You got to recognize what part of the story is the baby part and what part's the bathwater part. When I first met Robert David Steele, I said, he's a bullshit artist, got a lot of big stories, big kind of, big, ego, etc. But he was on the money with this open source. Open source is going to beat private kind of walled garden type research every time. And as the internet explodes, it only gets more so. Don't sit on anything is the rule. As soon as you learn something, share it with the internet. You're never going to be smarter than the internet. The internet's always going to be smarter than you. And that was the bathwater. That was the baby, with Robert David Steele. Everything else was bathwater. I agree with Jason on all that stuff. Everything else was bathwater. But it's the same thing with Quinn. Quinn Michael, thank you very much. I don't know everybody by their handles, so I appreciate the thing. JEJ, I should have something ready for that. Anyway, so Quinn, even if he says, okay, well, Neptunium's 93 and uranium's 92, right? And then he does a whole show on Neptunium and how Neptunium is going to change the world, and he does all the circles, the cyclotrons, and so forth. I say, wait a minute here. It may seem kind of spacey, but there's baby and bathwater there too. They went, Jason and Quinn went to a mine in South Dakota, and literally they were looking out over this precipice, right? And just giant hole. It was the biggest gold mine, I think, in the United States, right? I don't know if anybody saw this episode. And then Quinn goes into the museum, and there's this of how the tunnel articulation through all the, hundreds of tunnels, how extensive it was, right? So, and then someone else had said, nobody lets you go around here though after dark, right? And then a fourth person said, there's this weird explosions sometimes, and there's this weird humming noise sometimes. And I said, well, they're mining at night. You ever heard of robotic mining, right? So even if that person is saying, whatever they're saying, $100, I love you too, man. You paid for my next 2 nights. I love taking it's blessing in disguise. I have a license. I can drive and all that, but again, I go to the Washington Post. You've got to go out and talk to people, right? One of the guys I'm talking to, a lot of Uber drivers and Lyft drivers have a second job. This is their second job. So they work at government. I've like had the driver for Obama and like 3 times for the Secret Service, right? Okay. And a lot of white drivers don't like working in this neighborhood. It's dangerous neighborhood, known for drugs and so forth. And a lot of the black drivers that are from here will say, you know, there's not going to be. Oh, I had a driver from Syria today, and he was trying to teach me how to say, how do you say in Arabic? And he was saying, there are no white people in your hotel. I never drop off any white people. And I'm saying, hey, if you're reporting on rat lines and you're in your mom's basement in San Diego, you don't have anything to tell anybody about rat lines. You know, you can read anything you want. When you actually see somebody being beaten in your lobby, right, and you talk to all the people that affects, and you interview the guy who got, cold cocked by the guy, and he looked just like Alpha Jalo, and then there's no police report that's done, and then somehow he gets out the back door where nobody sees him, and then Jenny has 25 videos saying this is not police procedure. They would normally pull up an ambulance. She's going through the whole thing about how this is not normal. It started out normal, but kind of like it kind of ended where they had kind of gotten this operative out of here. We didn't know if he was here to kill us or what, but the kid kind of came out one way and nobody ever extracted him. He just kind of appeared out of nowhere in the car. And then this other guy kind of leaves, and then there was no police report. He wasn't even seen. Normally they would bring him out, that's been arrested, right? So we don't know if he was hit. What was interesting, I'm sorry I'm on this riff now, but his girlfriend was staying over at the La Quinta, which is the hotel about 300 yards away from here. So is that normal? Did the boyfriend stay on one side with the kid and then the girlfriend on the other one, and then she came over too early? So he was mad at her, right, for coming over too early. Well, why was she too early? And what would evoke that kind of reaction from Alpha Jalo? And I'm not saying it was Alpha Jalo, but man, it looked like Alpha Jalo. 6'7" guy, real tall, thin. What would evoke that kind of reaction? Well, let's say I was there to murder somebody, right? And you came over and blew it, right? And now you're asking about the kid and everything. You're blowing the whole thing. And if you're murder for hire, that's not a good thing. You want the murder money, right? So you want her to stay over at the other hotel. Now, interestingly enough, somebody died at that hotel about the La Quinta a couple months later. I think it was smoke inhalation or something. But I almost think like, there was a couple of close shaves here at this hotel before, Jenny's situation where it was a fake cop. It was a fake cop. That's what Jenny said on her thing, that was about ready to shoot her. All she said was, hey, I would like your business card to report this. He was like, I don't need to hear anything from you. Like, hey, wait a minute, I'm a police officer. I'm telling you, you have to, I want your badge number, I want your name, and I want your business card. You have to provide those. No, I don't. He goes, well, what about the police report? And she said, what about the police report? He goes, there's not going to be any police report. Right? So that's being out there, HA. That's actually encountering these different situations. And then you go, hey, I'm in the dealio. I'm right in the. I told a guy tonight. Another guy who lived here was my Uber driver, and he was from DC. Southeast is the really kind of rough area. He's lived here all of his life, and we're talking. And I said reporter and so forth, and I said, yeah, right there on those 2 rocking chairs, I met Rayful Edmonds' daughter. Rayful Edmonds is the one of the most notorious supposed killers. Oh, you're Rayful Edmonds' daughter. I said, well, is it true that George Bush, started your dad in Anacostia, with, Freeway Rick Ross? He started in LA selling the drugs and then brought him to, Washington, D.C. She said, you don't have enough time for me to tell you how strong the connection is between George W. Bush and Rayful Edmonds. And then Rayful Edmonds Jr., there's a son and a daughter, comes pulling up. Who knows if he took over the dad's business. Rayful Edmonds is in prison for murder. And then she gets in the car and takes off with Rayful Edmonds. That's pretty close to the story. That's pretty close to the story. How many other reporters out there interviewed Rayful Edmonds' daughter? Been in the dealio, right? Not reporting about things from my grandmother's basement, right? So so he says to me, he goes, well, there's this show out there called, I don't watch television, right? So he goes, there's a show called Snowfall. And it's about just what you said, where they bring up the MS-13 gangs into LA, and then they take them from there, Freeway Rick Ross, and they move them to Washington, D.C., and they try to get the drug trade started there with the cocaine and so forth. This is the Gary Webb Dark Alliance series. And right from the beginning of this series, I said the same exact thing about the Iwans. It's Iran-Contra. It's not Iran-Contra, like Gary Webb reported, it's Iran Contra, and it's drugs for weapons. It hasn't changed. The only change is, instead of, and I think I said this 2 years ago, the only change is, instead of north-south, which was Iran-Contra, as far as the drug flow, it's east-west. It's east-west with Pakistan. And it probably, if you really go all the way back, the Pakistani Mujahideen actually went to South America to help them develop the drug trade. So it's actually Iran Contra. It's all one thing, really. But we kind of divide it in our heads because Gary Webb reported on this piece of it, and I'm reporting on everything after. Okay. Yeah, it's going to probably, I've got a filter on here for profanity, so probably it's not going to show you your comments if you do that. I'm going to look at the comments here for a second. Jenny was just getting started with her media, and I remember the last days that I was with her, 3 or 4 days in a row at the Manafort trial, where she could not upload. Now, she was saying some pretty, thank you very much for the comment. Thane Lewis, I wish it would come up and say what city, because that always keys me into thinking about different things. Cascade Rocks made me think about Uranium One, and if there really was a plan to take over these farmers and ranchers' land. And, with all the evidence kind of piling up, it does appear to be that way. Both Republicans and Democrats kind of selling out their citizens. I mean, it's just the large landowners, to mainly China and Russia. Again, you wouldn't think that would be possible, but who would have thought that you could bring in Christopher Steele over the last 20 years to bring in all these Russian spies? Who knew? There's going to be a similar story with the Chinese. I know that, but I'm focusing on the Russians so much because I think they're the ones that did the DNC and the DCCC, along with the Iwans as the insiders. So, yeah, I don't. Zara, I know you're you get a pass. You're so good. You get a pass. So I just wanted to. I'll wrap it up there. Thank you. Oh man, this is awesome. Appreciate that. Thank you. I just wanted to wrap it up tonight by saying verification, verification, verification. And this is what I love about putting out a construct, a framework. It's beyond working theory. Working theory is just, well, I did a couple of experiments, and these elements that seem to have one electron on the outside have a valence and seem to act in a certain way, and this second column seems to act this way. Therefore, I think these are the next 6 columns, and then you can fill out the whole chart. It's beyond that. It's a framework in the sense that, no, I think this is the periodic table of elements. I think these are the properties as we go this way on the table. These are the properties that we go this way. I can predict in advance how things will happen as they come together, right? I have a predictive quality to this, right? It's a framework that's been reinforced with news stories that are all self-supporting and overlapping. And each one of them has a little bit of something new, right? And by doing all the overlap, you get, and the circle widens out, right? Of the aggregate story. It requires a tremendous amount of work, and I couldn't do it without all the people that contribute and paste different Wikipedias. You learn so much with Wikipedia, right? But in the end, you create this framework, and then you push the framework out, and everybody goes, well, you know, that actually is the framework of a J-31 Chinese jet. And it does actually look like, wow, thank you very much, Craig. I appreciate that. That does look actually like the F-35 frame. And it's only 2% difference. And somebody will go in and talk about it and go, oh my God. And then that airframe we put out there, I like what's his name, wrote that book, Airframe, the guy with the, Michael Crichton. Somebody puts it on and you go, oh, well, now we put a sheath over it, you know, and it's kind of like mocking up like a plane. It's something complicated. This isn't easy. This isn't like a block, you know, go, oh, there's a block. This thing is simple. It's Christopher Steele bringing over the Russians. Well, it's not just Christopher Steele bringing over the Russians. It's a long history of a lot of events, a lot of cover stories to confuse you, a lot of chopping up of the news and so forth. So it takes a lot of effort to actually kind of, you know, we're almost like, to stay with the airplane analogy, we're like the people in the coast watchers in World War II, where they were supposed to see a plane at a distance and then identify if it's a friend or foe, and then identify what kind of plane it is to know what kind of armaments it has. And I think I told this story before, but they started out with these flashcards back in the film strip days, you know, before they had computers, with these people in World War II. And they would show them a picture of the plane, and the people got so good at it, they started saying, well, we're just going to do silhouettes, right? And then they started going so fast, they could go click, 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 and these people just, all these different planes, they got so good at the pattern recognition. And that's the idea behind this channel, is to see these kind of deep state cover stories, see how the deep state profits, see how they firewall themselves off for these illegal activities, right? Using, like, let's say, Iran-Contra as a previous construct. And that's what I did right from the very beginning. I said Iran-Contra, as soon as it happened, Iran-Contra is just an updated version of Iran-Contra. That was very helpful over and over again. It's going to turn out that the whole thing is going to be Deripaska in Iran with the centrifuges and Levison doing the trading on Kish Island. That's what is going to end up happening here. Oh, wow, thank you. Where ¿Dónde vives, Alberto? Mi nuevo amigo. Nuevo amigo. Yeah, perfecto. Okay, yeah, we must be getting our message out to otros países, so other countries. Okay, so so that's the thing. Even just 2 or 3 different encounters a day with people who live in West Africa, or people like this guy from Syria, or so forth, rather than driving your own car, right? I get a guaranteed 2 or 3 interviews a day, and it's always something right at the end. Somebody else will say this and they'll say that, and well, that can't really help your investigation. You know, you're looking for the missing girls, the missing kids that are disappearing around the armory. And I'll tell them, like, gosh, I'm all of a sudden spacing on her name, but she was a little black girl that was kidnapped, Rilisha Rudd. And I said, hey, just so you know, here's what I found so far. I can't prove it, can't push it out there. But what it looks like is there's the prison that used to be DC General Hospital. When they go in there, it looks like the janitor is some kind of guy who used to be in prison, is now out there, and he's getting money to spot when new families are going into this halfway house that they have for these kids, right? He's spotting out the kids and so forth. And then he has an associate to come in and try to get that woman interested in drugs, right? And then they try to send her parties on the weekends or during the week and try to separate her from her kids. And then Mr. Beta Male takes these kids to birthday parties, right? Now, I don't know what happens at these birthday parties, but I don't want some guy my age taking kids to birthday parties while their mother is out being led into prostitution and introduced into drugs. And I said it happens at Stadium Armory exit, okay? Because Task Force and I went down there. Task Force went into that place, into the halfway house. We stood out in front of DC General Prison at midnight, pitch black, nothing, right? That allowed a framework to be created so that people, even if law enforcement wasn't interested, even if DC police weren't interested in following up on these missing girls, there was a framework where people who are Lyft drivers could then say, hey, I hear that DC, Armory stop is maybe where this trafficking, be really careful. The other one is all of a sudden these people are on the train with 3 different kids. None of them look alike and they're all the same age. And it's a guy with them. Now, I don't want to be prejudiced against fathers, with the kids, but I mean, they don't look anything like each other and they're all the same age. And it's like, is this a field trip in the middle of the day at 10 o'clock? I don't know what's going on here. Little girls, and they're getting off at the Stadium Armory exit, which is spooky. It's a spooky exit, late at night. I don't like it. So that's the power of that. People say, oh, that's speculation. What do I have to gain? Speculating is when you have something to gain, right? I have nothing to gain. I have only a construct put out there that may end up saving some kids, or at least putting a light near the train stop so there'd be, less abductions. People commit less crimes where there's a light. People may remember when I was doing the Alpha Jalo story in Brooklyn, I was talking about the light, about going over to and getting the light fixed. Right, where you could, and that's what I think people miss, and when they say, "Oh, this is conjecture." I'm not trying to gain anything here. I'm trying to say we had figured out. Task Force had gone down to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. She got bum rushed out of there like she was a criminal, right? Trying to help. You'd think somebody would sit down and go, "Well, what do you got? Hey, you're a police officer. Hey, you worked in exploited children for 11 years, 12 years, whatever it is. I'd at least take whatever you got, as interest." Half of the names, they don't publish the kid's name. They don't publish the kid's picture. How are you going to find the kid? Are they going to use the same name after they kidnap the kid? So we're just asking those simple questions, to try to say, why don't you publish the pictures? If the kid's really is missing. We found about a third of them, about 1 kid goes missing every day in DC, I believe. And there was a big push for this called DC Missing, Missing DC. Gosh, I'm forgetting what the hashtag was, but it was about a year ago in March, DC Missing Girls. And then it went away. It was a big thing, boom, went away. Daily Mail or the paper in the UK did a big story. I think it was the Daily Mail. But it was like, okay, well, the problem's over now. No, the problem isn't over. There's still an abduction every day. Now, about a third are runaways or run away with a boyfriend or whatever, but about 2/3, 2 out of 3. And I'm going toward, I'm feeling like I need to fill in the hole that Task Force has left. She was doing this every day, constantly. So maybe I have a penance here too for not doing enough while she was alive. But I felt like I should share that tonight. You can share that and just saying, hey, I think the stop is a bad stop on the Metro line. And hey, what are you doing taking 6-7 year, little kids, little tiny kids. And maybe some kind of, but we also had a lot of suicides. There's this LEE, it's a lead school, it's called. It's kind of like a magnet school for the public school. And 13-year-old girls, beautiful young 13-year-old girl committing suicide. Really? With all the social media and everything? And they were saying that she was being shamed. Isn't that really somebody, an older person that's raping and then trying to cover it up? There's just as much chance of that. Just didn't seem to make any sense. And this just happens way too much. There's just one of these every other day or so, at least once a week happens in DC. I'm off the topic. I shouldn't be doing this because it's not my area of expertise. That was Task Force's area of expertise. But I do want to kind of push out some of those constructs that she worked on and that we were working on, just so people have that. Now you can take it for what it's worth. If it's not worth anything, that's not. But I did work with her a little bit on that. No, Jenny, police report. Jason did a call into the police and a reporting from yesterday, which was national causes. You can order the autopsy report. I put out the medical examiner number, so you can look at that. I put out where she was cremated as well. What am I doing that she wouldn't want me to do? What am I doing that Jenny wouldn't want me to do? Michelle, what am I doing that Jenny wouldn't want me to do? That's important to me. I know you're a great contributor. Why would you say that? I'm really interested in this. I don't know. I'm really interested. She wouldn't want me to say what she was working on. I try to make amends with Jason every day. I don't want to be involved in any kind of war with Jason. I did that for 6 months. I ignored it. Then I finally, got mad one day and told the truth, and then I went back to ignoring it. And I try to make amends with Jason every day. Every day, I want him to be successful. If I didn't, why would I bring him Thomas Paine? Why would I bring him Robin Gritz? Why would I bring him? He wouldn't have had the Lionel interview. He wouldn't have had the interview with Charles Ortel, because he wouldn't have the numbers. Charles Ortel was looking at the numbers and saying, "Hey." Lionel was looking at the people calling him, saying, "Hey." If he sticks with what he did tonight, which is just good, solid interviewing, he's going to be great. He's very successful. But I also look back on the things that I encouraged him to do, which would really could have busted this case open already. If you'd have kept going with Laurel Everly, if you would have not taken the laptop to the police, that would have helped. If you'd have looked at the, that piece of evidence, that would have really helped. If you'd have done the Jaquea thing, I think that would have really helped. I had a lot of leads that I put out there. And this whole thing, it's only a matter of time. It's coming. We have the research. I have the research. I'm really interested in what Michelle said, though, because I'm like, what did I say that would be bad? Okay. All right. His channel was about 100 when I met him, and I was about 40,000, and his went up. And then, when Charles Ortel when I got dropped, it was kind of when Charles Ortel kind of made a commitment to do the Sunday shows. And that's when I was out the door. So that was his decision, not mine. So I can't make people do what I want them to do. Everybody's free to do what they want to do. So, okay. Well, anyway, I just wanted to wrap that up tonight. I got that little piece out there about put it this way. There are a lot of people that say, okay, I introduced Charles or whatever. Charles, the story with Charles, you can ask Charles, was, hey, shares. If you ask him, hey, how many times did this article get shared? That's his key thing. Like you talked to Zero Edge, here's how many times this article got shared. He's interested in having a message and getting it out, and he's looking for channels that can do that. If a person has 100 and he had never gotten together with Jason before that, he's not interested. But if there's 40,000, that's a significant reach, and so he's interested in that. So you could suggest all day with 100 people, that Jason talked to Charles Ortel, or Charles Ortel talked to Jason. Charles would go, well, it's 100. I mean, maybe if Jason was 10,000 or something, I don't know. You have to ask Charles Ortel. And what I did tonight was I tried to put out a construct, try to explain the idea of a construct or a framework. I tried to use the aircraft analogy of what we thought was happening in DC. Again, we worked on this every time Jenny and I took an Uber or a Lyft anywhere. And normally we'd have a longer one together where we'd be going all the way downtown to DC. So we'd have quite a bit of time with the people. We'd always talk if the person was from DC or the surrounding area, they'd grown up in DC, we would always talk about the militia red case. And we would remind people, and we'd talk about the community leaders like Jeannie here in this neighborhood, and we'd talk about the different community leaders that were kind of leading the charge here. So it wasn't like we're two white reporters riding through the hood. We don't care. We're just, we're in our lift. We're just gonna, blow through here. We did. We worked on it every day when we were together. Now, we also, if we were about ready to go to a Senate meeting or if we were about ready to go to a House meeting, we would be doing the, clickety-click, a lot of research as well. But I would say almost every trip at some point we did an interaction. We talked about the militia red thing. We would talk about the armory. The armory is where the old stadium is. So there, you can see how it may have had that kind of a lot of people coming and going, and it would be hard to, people could go missing very easily, and it would be hard to find somebody in a big crowd. It had that kind of thing. So I'm just trying to push that model out tonight. I'm not trying to become a child trafficking, expert, or I'm not that person. But they are, no, Michael Moore and Jenny are not related. I think it'll be interesting, though, to see the article that this comes out with. Now that Michael Moore is out with True Pundit, it would be nice to see the article that he did with the kid from Rhode Island, just to confirm everything we said about Wackenhut Pakistan, WACPAC, I call it. Wackenhut has been she was looking at it, remember, from the child trafficking point of view. I'm looking at it from the weapons. They go together. That is the key thing, that the takeaway that I learned from Jenny is like they always seal the deal with a kid, or a young girl or whatever. It's always something, or two women, or something that's embarrassing, so that you're not going to go back on this deal. I'm selling you Club K, but you got to join Club Compromat in order to get the Club K weapons, and that's just how they worked. And I saw a lot of the child trafficking things as really overblown as a cover for that other trafficking. I'm not saying that there isn't trafficking to seal the deal. I think there is in every weapons deal to seal the deal. But I don't think there's these runaway pedophile people that are just satanic and just, doing human sacrifices all over the place. I don't believe that, but people do believe that. And if they believe that, they can go investigate that. I am better off I think about supply chain and how would you make the Club K. And somebody had a great comment tonight that the Club K was probably made in China. It makes sense with Bruce Orr and so forth. It probably makes sense that the Club K was made in China. The missiles are made in Pakistan, Club K in China. Cheaper labor. It's closer to Pakistan for the distribution to the Middle East. We have a lot of different leads in China as well. So that's another model we need to look at. That's how I think, is like, okay, where would I make this? I would, Joe Biden is in this thing. I got two Joe Biden Navy interns or people that working up on Capitol Hill working for Joe Biden. That immediately tells me Dow or DuPont, Delaware. I went to the port of Delaware with a person from New York, the one we were looking at, the Long Island serial killer. Again, I'm going from town to town where there was murders, MS-13 murders, and also there was these 13 or 12 girls that were murdered over a period of 20 years. I think it was maybe 12 years, okay, from a person who knew them and was at the same club, right? And she said, they're not prostitutes. They were dancers. They were lured out to make some extra money. They were never told that it was going to be prostitution. They were lured out to these parties, and when it turned into prostitution, they'd try to run away. And I've got a 31-minute or whatever it was, if you watch that episode, of a girl trying to make 3 different phone calls to 911. Hey, hey, hey. She's nude or, just in her underwear running away, trying to get away from the Suffolk County Police and her driver. The driver was actually in on it as the kind of the fixer, the finder, right? And I went by the driver's description. I went to the town where the driver was. I started, you know, hanging out at the gas station, and I saw a couple of limos come in, and I just kind of checked them out, you know, and I just kind of watched and said, "This is odd." You know, Central, you know, I can't remember if it was Islip or somewhere in there, but big limo, you know, in a kind of a lower middle class neighborhood. It just didn't kind of make sense. I was wondering, where are the big mansions around here? It must be on the hill or something. I missed it, but that definitely, that area in there, all right in a row, was kind of the dumping ground. Anyway, that I had spent 4 days, maybe 5 days, with that person who knew a lot of the victims, and we went around all these places. We went to Saylorsburg together. We went to the home for Gulen, a guy who's wanted in Turkey right now by the government of Turkey, has a home for wayward girls. We went to the town that's next to it, adjoining it. It's the scariest, spookiest town you ever saw in your life. It looks like a finder town. So, I mean, this idea that, you know, I never worked the child trafficking thing. I did a lot of it. I just did it in concert with this drugs and weapons business. I believe the reason why I was there was I believe that they're caching weapons, and that the Gulen front is. I talked to numerous people who said one day a month they close off the road, and then they bring in vehicles so big it takes up both sides of the road. Plus helicopter traffic coming back and forth. You don't need helicopter traffic. Well, I guess you do for wayward girls. I guess wayward girls need helicopters too. But to me, it's like, hey, this is Club K. They're stockpiling Club K here. These look like containers, but they're not containers. There's something in there. You know, if there's insurrection, this is, you know, bring up the Club K. I'm not saying it was Club K necessarily, but I do think that these compounds, I don't think that they're obviously state supported. How could they not be? 33 different Muslim compounds. I went to the Islamic Center of North America, right? Along Islamic Society of North America, ISNA. I went to the place. I looked in. I saw in the back where they had the gate and everything. Everything's cool over here. Not a lot of nice, beautiful things. A nice ceremony over here. And then there's the training ground, right? What does the church need? A 250-acre training ground, right? Again, it just seemed like it was a state-supported area where they're caching weapons. And if you don't think the Army caches weapons, if you don't think the Army tries to be prepared for an emergency situation, continuation of government situation, well, we disagree. I believe that the MAVNI program, military assets vitally needed in case of insurrection. Some people say, well, the MAVNI program, I believe their number, 665,000 people came in under that program. And those people are kind of the watch force, the watch guards. They've got all the equipment. They do training at those camps and so forth. I don't want to be conspiratorial. I'm just being realistic. If I was setting up a camp to put down insurrection, I would do the same thing. I would bring in mercenaries from another country. Hey, it happened in our revolution, the Hessians, right? I would train them constantly so that they were ready for insurrection. It all makes sense, right? So I was chasing down that part when I went to Saylorsburg, right? But you know, I mean, we went to all the places where people were murdered. We went to, you know, the bodies were all found on these rice bags. We went to found the factories where the burlap bags, the basmati rice. We thought, hey, this person's in the drug business. Maybe they're also, you know, in this thing where they're providing entertainment for these dignitaries that come out from New York to these gigantic parties. These Great Gatsby type parties, right? That's the situation these other girls that survived said, right? That's their story, not mine, right? So why wouldn't that be a person who's trying to make a little extra money on the weekend? And maybe he's dumb enough to bring the rice bags from where he works. If he's doing drugs, if he's pulling off certain basmati rice or whatever, I don't know how they would do that, but if he's in that business and he's using the burlap bags, Wouldn't that be a thing that you would want to push out as the Suffolk County Police? Wouldn't you want to push out the logo and say, here's what the logo looks like on the basmati rice? No, because what they don't want to do is create a panic, where people go, oh, it's got to be somebody at the rice factory. This was the same thing with the Delphi girls. Hey, they work at the meat factory, right? They're the double garroting, right? There's the same thing with Evansdale girls. Why wouldn't you go out to the meatpacking plant and say, hey, we're gonna have a visa check, and if you don't have a visa, we want to know where you were on this night. And I would ask every person in that meatpacking plant in Delphi, Ohio, where were you? You're not going to get the total answer from the first person, but they're going to say, well, I remember there was, a sale at the Walmart on barbecues, and I was over there with, and then start getting the cameras and start putting the thing and then push it out. This should be an open source investigation. Still should be an open source. Same thing happened with the girl who was just recently killed, the Tibbetts girl. If somebody hadn't put that camera out and said that she was jogging this way, it probably never would have come up with a murderer. And again, I put out these constructs. They're not necessarily conspiracy theories. They're to help law enforcement and help all open source research, right? If you have a situation where you want to sell drugs, okay, put their hat on, put their hat on. I want to sell drugs, right? I either can have somebody who is in America, who cares a lot, who grew up with all these people in this town, who knows Bobby from the baseball and knows Susie from horseback riding, and that's my teacher lives on that corner. Kind of like J.K. when he talks about DC, he knows everybody, right? Especially teachers. Teachers know everybody, right? It's a lot harder to get that person to bring in drugs that are going to kill people with overdoses, right? Than if you say, you're here now working at the meat plant, right? Which is, we're going to be having you pull off the drug payload out of these, carcasses or whatever, right? And your family's back in Pakistan or wherever, Yemen, and you're trying to get them here. Or switch it around, the woman's here and your husband is in prison in Pakistan. And if you do the right thing for 5 years, hey, Tafshin Malik, if you cook the drugs out in San Bernardino for 5 years, right, and do that reduction and get us the product we want, we'll release your family from prison. She was from Multan, I believe. But I believe that's the model. The Tafshin Malik is the model to bring in. Now they've moved a lot of the processing overseas, right? But that's the model. You would want, if you go back to the British Empire, you would use the Hmong tribe, right? You use these tribes that are kind of insular to themselves, so that they don't think about it. They think, hey, this is us. It's really about us. It's our clan. I don't care about anybody else. It's our clan, right? And that helps. That helps actually solve these crimes, right? And that's where I was saying about the kids at Purdue, the veterinary kids at Purdue. If you know these kids are buying that, they're going to go into veterinary medicine. They're going to buy pills for horses, right? That can be broken up and then repilled, like the problem in Canada with Montreal. Why wouldn't you want to get them all at the same time in college? Why wouldn't you want to have two girls, right, that are obviously underage, and then get the whole